Well, welcome to another edition of the Santa Fe New Mexican podcast. I am your sports editor, Will Weber. Usually, I have my co-pilot with me, James Barone. But James, look, the only thing harder to do with James Barone is to get him. Look, the only thing harder than having him take time off is build a stadium for the New Mexico United. So I actually did manage to get James to take some time off today. So I'm doing the podcast by myself today. But while he's gone, I'm going to have a guest on the show, a guy that he actually covers the team for us. He covers the New United. So we have the United CEO, the president, the founder, Peter Trevisani, Santa Fe resident, a longtime sports nut. The guy's been around for a while. All his kids went to Santa Fe Prep. So, Peter, welcome to the show, buddy.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I wish he had a shovel and was digging right now on that stadium. I'd take it, but we'll get to it. But great to be here, and yeah, happy to be here today.
It was 8 years, 1 week, and 3 days ago that the USL made the introduction that you had landed an expansion franchise in the soccer league. So, just what do you remember about June 6th, 2018, that day that changed everything for the state of New Mexico?
Well, I remember I was a young man back then, and boy, the gray hair has come in when I look at those old pictures. I can't believe it was 8 years ago. That day was incredible. As was, all I think the journey of New Mexico United can be broken into all these different pieces. And one piece was everything that happened before the first kick in March when we had our first game. And the reason I put that all into a bucket is simply this, is that we had no idea what this was going to look like. Would anybody show up? What was the quality of play? How would the response be to the team, to the fans, to having a men's team in general? There was a lot going on with UNM men's soccer at the same time. So there was always a little political controversy, which thank God, being more in Santa Fe, I wasn't as day to day on. But it was just this constant wonder and unknown. And when we announced the team, it was in this theater in Albuquerque. There was no air conditioning. It was a nice, crisp 98 degrees. We had the ceiling fans, which don't really work. And so we're just boiling in there, but the room was packed and the level of enthusiasm was tremendous. We had this super cheesy video we played. I look back on it, I'm like, wow, that was bad. But we were so proud of it at the time. And, look, it was the best we could. We've always been trying to do the best that we can. So I think the big moment that day, there were two. One, we got to announce our first player, and it was a big surprise. Nobody knew that we had actually signed Devin Sandoval, a local hero, played in the MLS, phenomenal guy. He comes to almost every game now. He's got his own family, but we announced Devin Sandoval, and I think that clicked for everybody. This is high level soccer. This isn't just a bunch of guys running around. And so that felt great. And then I remember being at Marble Brewery afterwards, having a beer and really talking to what would be our first generation of fans and supporters. And like hearing how excited they were just gave me confidence and relief that we actually were spending our time in the right place, and how needed. I had so many people come up to me that day saying, I was going to move from Albuquerque because there's not enough for me to do here as a 25-year-old. I'm going to stay and see what this team looks like. And that right there just was everything, because that's what we've been trying to do with this team, make New Mexico a better place, the next best version of itself.
Yeah, now we can fast forward to March 19th, the following year, 2019, the first game. You're playing at Isopes Park. There's almost 13,000 fans there. And then Devin, the kid who played at El Dorado, the Albuquerque guy, scores your first goal. There's two other New Mexican players that are in on the assist.
Yeah.
It couldn't ask for a better start there.
I mean, how does that happen? That just can't. There's got to be a higher power somewhere,
Yeah.
And one of the things, maybe is like I grew up playing American football, the other
Mhm.
football, and soccer to me was sort of like this boring 1-0 sport. I was like, well, who would want to play that? And when every time I played, someone would steal the ball, and I'd have to run in the heat and catch him, and I wasn't fast enough, so it was like a horrible experience. So I I uh I didn't really understand that. I started to really learn about the game. But one thing about Devin Sandoval, when he hit that banger from outside the box, he never scored another goal outside the box the rest of his career. All his goals are headers and second rebounds. And, he was a great, maybe one of our best goal scorers ever. But I didn't understand that not only do we have 2 assists from other New Mexicans, I think it was Schmidt and Suggs. We got Devin hitting a 30-yarder, which was never going to happen again either. So it was just divine intervention, and what a way to start. I remember leaving the park that night, driving away from Isotopes Park, and I felt a lot of things, but I could still almost feel like, yes, a lot of pride, but also a little bit of a sadness because I knew we'd never have another first game.
Mhm.
And while I was so grateful, I understood it was just this moment that could never ever be recaptured again. And you know, it was awesome. And maybe in many ways that's the perfect, birth and maybe the end of stage one of our team. We've had so many other incredible moments, but that was one that will live with me forever.
Now, the official seating capacity for Isotopes Park is listed at 13,000. That first year, you led the USL in attendance, averaging 12,693 over 17 games, which is, for anyone who grew up in New Mexico and has watched sports, that's shocking that you drew that well. Were you surprised at all by the just the overnight success you had in year one?
Yes. I I was definitely surprised with how many people said yes to the invitation of professional soccer. I think what I wasn't surprised about, or what we were really hoping to create, was like the vibe, the energy, like what the team meant, why it was important, how it was a tool for us to express, to export New Mexico to the rest of the world. We don't have a lot of professional sports teams here. We don't
Mhm.
have, we have Division 1. You see it with the Lobos with basketball, and now with their football team on a rebound, like how important it is for us to show that, we can compete at the highest level. And so I would have been happy if 4,000 people, fans, had shown up, as long as they brought the Somos Unidos, spirit, the sense that this team is about us and for us. And instead of 4,000, we got 14,000. And I'll just say this on attendance, because I get asked all the time, maybe if it's a big night or it's not a big night. I just look around that stadium and I'm so grateful for all the people that said yes, because they
Mhm.
could be doing anything else. And they decide that they want to come that night to the park and spend it with us. Always grateful. And while attendance isn't 12,000 anymore, we're still getting 8, 9, 10,000 regularly. And man, is it loud, and do people care? And that's really the most important part.
I actually did the math on this last night through, I believe, it's over 100 matches now. The team has drawn over 1 million fans. You're
Mhm.
averaging 9,937 fans in your history at home, which is just astounding. It's amazing the fact that people still continue to come out. You've got a really passionate fan base with the Curse. I know the Curse shows up.
Mhm.
They do the pregame march, the
Yep.
smoke bombs, the whole thing. But what is the origin of the Curse? Where'd that come from?
Oh man, the curse. Boy, again, like I was learning a lot about football, soccer culture. Now at the World Cup, I guess we got to call it football for the next, 6 weeks, which is
No, we
fine.
don't. Yeah, I think.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, I learned a lot of the stuff as we were going along. And I think one of the things that, I was 50 years old when we started the team. So you can do the math on that. And I had been in business and doing things for a long time. And I think as you get older, you do start to get a little more set in your ways, or you see things that maybe work for you and don't work for you. And I really had to make a personal decision when we started this team that I needed to forget many of those things, or just let go of the control. And so much of this team, it was really going to be what I call an invitation for people, and then how they accepted that invitation or didn't was up to them. And the curse is a great example. So a couple people approached us saying they wanted to create a supporters club. We went to Star Brewery down in Albuquerque, which is a soccer bar, sports bar. I think 4 people showed up, and it was me, and it was Ron Patel from the club, and
Mhm.
Lucas Cash, and we had a few beers. And the guys that I can't remember their names. I would say, nice guys, a little quirky. Not guys I would usually like, you know, necessarily collaborate with from my business world, but that's cool.
Yeah.
And we'd have a beer, and they were like, "We have a name for the supporters." I'm like, "What is it?" And they're like, "It's the curse." And man, did I hate the name. I was like, this is supposed to be a project of positivity, and like you're throwing a negative term on there. And he talked about the curse of Lew Wallace, the governor that came here and said, I won't quote it perfectly, but everything that works, just because it works somewhere else, it's never gonna. It doesn't mean it's gonna work in New Mexico. New Mexico does it its own way, and
Mhm.
that is a curse. It's also something really beautiful, because you just need to understand what the sun and rain and earth need to look like here. It's just different in the desert.
Yeah.
So, but I had to let that go. They came forward with it. We just supported with it. I bought them a drum, $200 used drum at the music store. I went down and gave it to them so they could bang it, and they rallied, and boy did that group show up. I think the first year, you got to remember, we never had a pro. We had the New Mexico Chili's maybe 20 years before, so we
Yeah.
had some pro soccer here, and mad respect for what they built. So I want to be careful to not to push over that, but it had been a long time, and there was multiple generations of pent up demand
Mhm.
for pro soccer. And so everyone came out and poured their hearts into it. And they created tifos every game, and they would do the marches, and they would show up and cheer on the team at the airport or wave to the buses during COVID. And some of that remains and some of it's died off. I think the level of energy was almost unsustainable, but they really wanted to express themselves. And the beauty that year was unbelievable. And the curse, which the curse is only one of many supporter groups now. And so our supporter section, the 1,000 people behind the goal that stand and sing, the Black Diamonds, the Maledición, the curse, like they've all come together, and they all have a different reason for being there, but for 90 minutes a week, it's that reason is united.
Now, New Mexico does have kind of a checkered past with professional sports. You did mention the Chili's, that they had a flash in the pan in the 90s and then they faded away. The Albuquerque Geckos, which was their successor, they didn't last very long. There was the old Albuquerque Silvers basketball team in the CBA, the Thunderbirds, which played well for a while. You had the New Mexico Scorpions, but it kind of leads into facilities, because the Albuquerque Isotopes and the Dukes before that did well, because people just like showing up to the ballpark and having fun. But I think people in Albuquerque, people in New Mexico seem to have learned a valuable lesson with the Dukes, is that if you don't have the facility, people just, as much as they love the team, they're not going to want to come out because the surroundings aren't great. And so, in a sense, you almost have to prove yourself before the city, before the state will give you the funding to build a stadium that makes people comfortable. It feels to me, and I could be speaking out of turn here, that the United has done more than enough to prove that you deserve your own facility. And to that end, the stadium journey that you've gone through, where you actually got it on a ballot and it was voted down 2-1, which is shocking to me. How frustrating has it been, and what have you learned over the years to get from where you were to where you are right now?
Well, there's a lot there. Well, one, this
Yeah.
is going to turn into a therapy session. I think my PTSD just bubbled back up from the
Uh-oh.
bond and all that. And I mean, you're right. There is a graveyard of professional teams that have come before us. And I have so much respect for every single individual, whether it's an owner or staff that worked or player. It's super hard. And all of them at least gave it a try. I
Mhm.
talked to Gina, who did the Gladiators. Now we got the Chupacabras. I mean, these things are not easy, yet they bring a lot of value to the community. The bond, you're right. We do need our own stadium. One of the things that when we were getting started and I didn't know much, I knew that if we were going to, I didn't want to do a semi-pro team. I didn't want to do a team that was just sort of like the Albuquerque Soul, terrific.
Yeah.
They were awesome, and in many ways, kind of the forefather for this team. But I didn't really want to do a team that's playing at St. Pius one week and over here. That's just not what it was. It had to be the pro. So there was only one stadium that we could play in, and that was Isotopes Park.
Mhm.
To the city's credit, the Isotopes credit, they made it happen. They converted the field. They provided a field for us. We've obviously invested a lot of money over the years, continue to invest in the team. So I hope people feel like we've done our part. I think we have. Um, but we also knew that would not be sustainable long term. So yes, I think that the bond got voted down with the city to basically replicate what they did with the ice tips, which, by the way, has been a successful public building. I mean, everyone wants to talk about all these public things that haven't worked out, and in some cities they don't. But this was not an 80,000 seat stadium in the middle of Baltimore. This is
Mhm.
a facility that could be used every day. So I think part of what happened during COVID, the bond came out right after COVID. There's a lot of anger about a lot of things, and the bond got caught up in that. And so people that normally would have voted for it didn't. People that normally wouldn't vote for it definitely didn't vote for it, and we lost, 2-1. Maybe that was a blessing, when we get down the road. We're going to build a privately funded stadium at Balloon Fiesta Park, but we had a dozen people who, just don't want to see this happen in that area, even though it's a public park and there's 400 acres out there,
Mhm.
and it's an 8,000 seat facility. And so they sued the city on the process, and they continue to push back on the city, and maybe we need to send them some champagne as well, because I do think this plan that Governor Grisham has put forward to revitalize the state fairground
Mhm.
um, is brilliant. It's needed, and the stadium is only one piece. What is being proposed, what I've seen publicly, is the same that you've seen, which is to really revitalize that area, to make the fairgrounds better, to try to support Tingley better. There's already a Racino out there to,
Mhm.
basically take 8 or 10 acres that are in major disarray and to reconfigure them into a public park with housing, with an event center, which would be a multi-use stadium that we could play in. Um, if we're not doing projects like that, I don't know. I don't know what we're going to do to grow the city. And I
Yeah.
think that if this can get pulled off, under the master plan that got provided by the state, it will completely revitalize Route 66.
Mhm.
There'll be, better streets, there'll be better, security. This could be a massive catalyst for the international district. And I think while there, might be some additional, uh, I'm not saying that it won't be inconvenient potentially for some residents on game day. The benefits that we can bring massively outweigh the negatives. And um, if we don't do something in that area, it's just going to continue to decay and erode. And we can't do that. We can't have that. That's
Yeah.
just going to make it impossible to grow.
Yeah, totally agree. I've been to that area. In fact, I was there just a couple weeks ago. My son graduated from high school, and that area, that
Okay.
southwest corner of the fairgrounds, is not great. But every story you ever hear about a stadium being built in a metropolitan area, it's usually kind of in a rundown area, and then it
Hmm.
revitalizes the entire thing. It injects money, life, energy, just a sense of security. And I think it could. It's exactly what the city of Albuquerque, what the state of New Mexico needs at this point. And I think you guys, again, you've proven it with the longevity and the fan support. And
Yep.
this is not a fly by night organization. You've built a training facility on the south side of town. You have you have a flag that represents every single town in Pueblo in the state. You've really embraced the New Mexico culture. It's like, I don't know what else you have to do to get the money to get this thing done.
Yeah. I mean, there's a plan in place. We're going to put some, if this works out and we're selected to be part of it, we're willing to bring some private dollars forward. We've got the team, and a couple things. One, going back to like the local community, change can be scary. And I get that. And there's a lot of people that live there that love soccer, that love sports, and there's a lot that don't have never been to a sporting event. And so they don't understand the importance of it. So we appreciate that it can be, scary, but I think that we can't continue to operate at the lowest common denominator. It's just not going to be good enough. And we can't be driven by fear and just let that overtake these projects. This is not the only project that's been shot down
Mhm.
because people are nervous about change and they don't want it to change. But um I think that if we do this right, the stadium isn't just a place for a men's soccer team. It can be something that's open every single day. The community can use it. It can bring new events. this is a great example. You talked about the Dukes and isotopes in the park. I would bet anything, even though I wasn't in the room, that back in 2000, when they were talking about building what is now Isotopes Park, not a single person said, if we build this baseball stadium, we're going to get a pro soccer team one day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yet without it, I personally never would have brought United to New Mexico. Maybe somebody else would have. And so I don't want to say it never would have happened, but I wouldn't have been involved, and it wouldn't have been what this team is. I don't know what it is, but if we build this facility, make it multi-use, there's going to be something we're not even talking about that is now going to come to Albuquerque, come to New Mexico. We have to have an abundance mindset. We have to responsibly believe and allow ourselves to imagine things that might have been unimaginable. And New Mexico United is here now, and let's go see what else can come down the road.
Now, full disclosure, I do have a source on the Albuquerque Isotopes grounds crew. My son is actually on the grounds crew there, and he was there on Sunday when they were transitioning from soccer back to baseball. How much of a headache is that for the team and for the logistics of just getting from one to the other?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of work, first of all. And hats off to your son, to Thomas, the head groundskeeper, to all the groundskeeper that came before him. Those guys, they were working almost every day for the baseball team. Then they have this soccer team that's running on the grass. And so what do we need to do? One, you need to prepare, basically the area that we're redoing is the infield. So if people aren't familiar with what that could look like. So the infield of a baseball field is dirt. So you have to now put sod on top. So we got to bring in, a lot of sod, put it on top, make sure it's going to stay down. It's obviously not going to take root, but you have to compact it down so when you step on it, it's not sliding all over the place. You got to try to keep it green, but not too wet where it's like mushy. If it rains, we got to bring the tarp out. So we have once the sod's laid down, our staff will go out there at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. sometimes and roll the tarp over if there's rain, roll it back off so it can dry out. And then when it's all done, it all has to come up, and we got to they have to rebuild a baseball, field. In the first few years, we actually used to take out the baseball mound because that created a better sight line. And it was a better sight line, but we were finding that the baseball mound wasn't settling perfectly. I actually asked them to put a retractable mound like some other places. So the mound would actually get lowered down below ground, and you'd cover it, and then you'd raise the mound back up. And that would have saved, it would have been a little bit of money in the front end, but it would have saved a lot more money in the long end. I still think they should do that so they can have other events, but we've shifted it now so that the mound can stay in. I think that's been a big help, and hats off to the whole crew to make that happen, to the city, to the Isotopes, to United. We were all working together. It's important. And we're making it happen.
Yeah, that's a one-time use for that grass too. Grass just goes to waste after that. That's got to be a big expense.
Yeah, when we originally were mapping it out, I was hoping that they could re-roll the grass up and then maybe bring it to like a golf course, or if people wanted to redo their yard. We were really trying to talk about ways to, recycle, upcycle, reuse the grass. I think that unfortunately, that hasn't, taken root, pun intended, and bad pun. And you're right, it's not perfect. Our situation is not perfect. It never has been. It's not perfect for anybody. So another reason why let's go build another facility, and let's go show people that we've earned it and we deserve it.
Now I want you to fire up your flux capacitor here. We're going to go in the Wayback Machine. I did a deep dive into YouTube to see if I could find video of your playing days at Boston College in football. I did see some old games from 1989, 1987. I didn't spot you out there. Of course, they're not full game clips, but I remember when you and I first talked, you mentioned to me a game in 1987 when you're playing USC in the Coliseum, and you had a run-in with a future NFL star on a kickoff. You want to share that story with us?
Well, ironically, right here, I'll move my camera. There's a picture of Pete in the
There you
homepage if
go.
you can see it with the 47. So,
Good.
you know, I walked on at Boston College. You know, I wanted to play football, and this is back before there's video footage and all that. And I had a few Division III coaches that were interested in a 175-pound defensive tackle from a small boys school in Boston, but certainly not any Division I. And so I decided to go to Boston College, and then really said, why am I not trying out anyways? Like, why am I going to let the image of a team or what other people are saying, or a coach that doesn't even know me, decide what I'm going to try to do and not do? So I went on the pretty arduous path of walking on. And for every walk on you hear that makes it, there's hundreds and thousands that don't. But I
Mhm.
think everybody that's tried, my hat's off to them. It's a very, tough journey. And it's not just all up to you. You need some luck. And so, yes, I walked on, and for 2 years, I didn't step on the field. So I went to every practice, every training session, winter, spring practice, trained in the summer all 1 year, did it a whole again for another year. And finally, my junior year, I showed up, and I was about 215 pounds at this point. Certainly had, been practicing with the team, and we were in summer camp, and the kickoff coach came up to me, he goes, "You look great. How do you feel about, I want you on kickoff?" And I'm like, "I'm in, coach." So our first game was at home against USC, and I was so fired up. I was going to get my first play on the field. Once I knew I stepped on that field and had a play, you could never take it away,
Yeah.
and it would be in the books. We deferred, and USC scored every time they had the ball. So I was also on
Mhm.
punt return, but so we never got them to punt, and we never got to kick off in the first half. And this was, by the way, also the opening college game. So it was on ESPN. It was like a Thursday night.
Yeah.
And so we're finally on kickoff. And that whole game week, we had been planning to run away from this linebacker named Marcus Cotton. He was an All-American defensive end, outside linebacker. So we just kept running to the other way. But the whole game, it kept getting blown up. So finally on kickoff, that guy's also on kick return because he was a young guy. And I remember, and he just looked different. I mean, I was 215, he was 245. You know, he was faster than me, but I was more scared. So on my opening kickoff, I run down, and I kind of see him. I just veer away and run by him. And I'm literally, God, this is like it was yesterday. I'm like staring into like the wedge. Back then, you could have a wedge, the
Mhm.
line before the guy with the ball. For football people, you understand it. And I get to the wedge, and I just, because I'm so freaked out, this is like my war cry. I jump over over the wall, and I lock eyes with the running back who's got the ball, and he can't believe I'm coming over the top, and I'm coming in like this, and he just ducks, and I kind of go right over him. And but at the same time, the whole thing collapses, and it kind of looks like I made the tackle even though I didn't touch him. And I land on the ground, I jump up and pump my fist up because I'm alive. That's purely the only reason. And so they actually like showed it back on ESPN. So long story short, the guy who was running around was this guy by the name of Junior Seau, who ended up being also an All-American linebacker.
Yeah.
USC beat us like 41-7. I got my kickoff. I think I got a punt return in, and my career got launched. So
Yeah.
mostly all special teams. And when we had enough injuries, they'd throw me in at linebacker. But what a great couple of years I had.
Now, if you go to profootballreference.com, you go into the college section and you look up your stats, it actually has you for a punt return for touchdown. Did that happen?
Man, you must be a reporter.
Yeah.
I mean, if you got it's another funny story. So if you got time for it. So
Yeah.
this was now at the tail end of my career. And it was my last home game, and we're playing Louisville, who had a really good team that year. Was it Bo Schellenberger, who was the ex-Miami coach, was their head
Oh,
coach.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think I just butchered his last name, but and we weren't having a great season, and it was our last home game. And so I was on, punt return, and we had Louisville back at like the 12-yard line, and they were punting. And so we put punt block on. And, one of the things about football, I never served in the military, but I have a feeling it's similar, is that you just need to follow the instructions. No improvising. Don't think, just do. Otherwise, people are going to get hurt, or in the military, maybe killed. And everything's on tape. So when you make a mistake, you get yelled at. And I made so many mistakes and got yelled at so much. So on this punt return, I go in to block. My guy just jacks me up right away and like pushes me 3 yards to the right. So I'm like out of the play. And in my mind, I remember I'm like, maybe I'll run back since I can't block it. And just in case the guy catches it and wants to return, I'll try to throw a block. And then in that back of my head, I can hear my coach yelling at me for not going for the pump block. So instead of improvising, I turn back around. I'm way out of the play, and I start to go towards the punter. All this in obviously a split second is happening. So Dave Johnson, the other guy who didn't get blocked, comes flying in and dives, and he blocks this punt. He doesn't block it where it goes in the ground. He blocks it so like it goes up in the air about 10 feet and it's circling. And I look up, and here it comes, and it lands right in my hands. And I'm just like, run, Forrest, run, and I run all of about 6 yards, score a touchdown. We go up 6-0. Everybody's celebrating, and there was a clip. Those games were on what was called the New England Sports Network. I remember watching it. And they show me on the sideline. I'm huffing and puffing, and one announcer's like, "Hey, there's Pete Trevisani getting a well-deserved rest after that punt return touchdown." And the other announcer says, "I don't know why he's so tired. He only ran 6 yards." Yeah. So
That's a
that
30 for
that happened.
30 right
Thanks,
there.
DJ. If you're listening, I appreciate the block.
I tell you what, I wonder who's going to play you in the movie. Mark Wahlberg, because I mean, Mark Wahlberg, he's already done that movie. Maybe get Timothy Chalamet to do it.
Yeah, the root god. But you know what? Look, it's I got lucky, but I do believe that you make your own luck. And I think the harder you work, the luckier you tend to get. I did work really hard.
Yeah.
I got the most out of what I could do. I had to acknowledge that, hey, I wasn't good enough to be a starting linebacker. I wasn't good enough to be in the NFL, or I wasn't able to tap into that. But I was able to find my max, and that was a gift. And I felt like coming out of Boston College football, if I could just find my max and whatever I really wanted to do, whether it was work, whether it was family life, whether it was in friendships and relationship, if I could find my max, then I could get the most out of what I'm here to do on the planet. So I've tried to do that whenever possible. I think United, um it's not perfect, but I have given it my all. It's been a lot of energy, and I'm going to keep going until we get this stadium done.
Well, you've certainly left your mark. I mean, you've moved to New Mexico. You made a huge difference. You raised your kids. You
Thank
have
you.
beautiful family, and it's a sports legacy. I think that's definitely secure. You've earned your spot in the state of New Mexico. People
Appreciate
love
that.
your team. So, look, one last thing.
Yeah.
I know you played during the Flutie Phelan era. Do you have any Flutie Phelan stories you can share with us?
Well, so Doug Flutie is a little bit older, so he
Yeah.
graduated 2 years before I started. I
Yeah.
did so his big year was the 1985 Cotton Bowl, and I came a couple years later, 87. We did play Georgia in the Hall of Fame Bowl and beat them. It was the first ever Hall of Fame Bowl back then. That was when you actually had to be a good team
Yeah.
to get in, and we were like 9-3 and top 25, and then it kind of went downhill. And so Doug would come around. That's when he was playing with Donald Trump's New Jersey Generals in
Yeah.
in that league. But this is a funny story. So about 20, I don't know, this had to be maybe 20, I think it was 25 years after the Cotton Bowl. I was back for a game, and they had the whole Cotton Bowl team back, and we're out in the parking lot, and Doug's there, and I would introduce myself when I saw him, and he's such a great guy. Made you feel like you were a teammate even if you weren't, and so all of a sudden people are like, hey, let's take a picture. And all these guys get together. I'm right next to Doug, and there's maybe 30 former players. And I look up, and there's like 50 cameras taking pictures. And I'm like, this is like incredible. Everybody really, why does people care so much? I had sort of stumbled into the reunion. So it was the 1985 Cotton Ball reunion picture, which I wasn't even on that team, but there I am right next to Flutie, and I guess I looked old enough for the part. So
Nice.
somewhere out there, I'm immortalized as part of the Cotton Bowl team, even though I didn't play on it. So great guys. Brother was an awesome player, and Doug's been through a lot on his personal journey. There's a guy that emptied the tank, man, every single day. So a lot of respect for him.
Well, your next match is coming up, July 1st, a friendly against a team from Italy. Is that right?
Team from Mexico.
Mexico. Okay.
Yeah, which is great. We have so many people from Mexico that live here and in New Mexico, and there's always a lot of excitement. That's one where some people are rooting for both teams, and so we've got that friendly, and then we're going to have a huge game on July 4th, where I think we're just going to be packed, massive fireworks show. We're going to be announcing that Chevelle is going to be singing. She won The Voice many years ago, and she's going to come down for some pregame song, and we're really going to pull out all the stops for this game on the 4th. So we got the friendly against Mexico, which is awesome, and then the game on July 4th.
Very cool. I'll make sure James Brown is there for that one, because
let's do it.
Yeah, I'll find a spot in the grass in the berm somewhere, and then
we'll get you a cold beer too.
Yeah, there you go. Peter Trevisani, CEO, president, founder of the New Mexico United, just an incredible success story for professional soccer. And look, hopefully in a few years, we're playing in a new venue on the fairgrounds, revitalize that entire area and see where things go. But Pete, just want to thank you for coming on. Santa Fe resident, you're one of Santa Fe's best. So
I appreciate it. That's really kind. Thanks for everything you do, supporting the community every single day. People get to hear about what's happening in New Mexico because of the great work you're doing. So thank you too. And we're all doing it together. So, somos unidos, and let's keep going. We're going to get the stadium. It's a promise.
All right, man. Thank you. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
I'm David. I work for Chevron, and this is my New Mexico. Chevron's been here for 100 years. My family could go back even further. All of my brothers work in energy.
I grew up in Farmington, New Mexico. There is a lot to love about New Mexico. We are raising our kids here.
We're here for the long term. I'm paving the way for my daughters so that they feel the same pride in New Mexico.
Here we go.
All right, once again, thanks again to our guest, Peter Trevisani, CEO, president, founder of the New Mexico United. Again, if you haven't been out to a game, you got to get out there and check it out. They do a really good job staging the event, and it is an event. It's not just a game at Isotopes Park. It is a big deal. And so they come back, they play on July 1st and again July 4th. So busy 3-4 day stretch for that team. And it's what the Isotopes are to baseball. They're definitely to soccer or football in the state of New Mexico. But again, thanks to Peter for sharing his stories about his playing days. I was trying to get that Junior Seau story out of him because he told me that story about 8 years ago, and I've always gotten a kick out of it. And every time I see him, we kind of roll back through memory lane, him talking about that. So Peter Trevisani, New Mexico United, pretty good success story. Coming up later this week, we'll have a feature story on Branch Rickey, who, of course, if you're a baseball fan, you know all about the Rickey family. They helped integrate baseball. They founded essentially the farm system for minor league baseball, what we know it as today. Branch Rickey III, he's now 80 years old. He's being inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame for here in the States. So that'll come up during Duke's Retro Night at the Isotopes games. This weekend is essentially the start of the Rodeo to Santa Fe. Next week is the rodeo itself, but all the pre-rodeo festivities start. We have a freelance writer doing the story for me, not me, not James, because the rodeo's not easy to deal with, but we'll have a feature story on the Rodeo to Santa Fe later in the weekend. And as always, subscribe to our newsletter, go to the New Mexican website, santafenewmexican.com. Click into the newsletters, jump into the sports newsletter. We update that once, twice a week. And if you have any story suggestions, by all means, hit us up, and I'll make sure to pass that along to James Brown, have him get right on that for me. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.